we have a demographic crisis. Because if we were happy teeming millions with 35% natural growth rate in the 1850s, Lincoln's America, right, and that natural increase dipped below 20% during World War I, I can barely say it out loud. It's so shocking, right? Our natural rate of increase in 2019 is 6.5. 6% natural rate of increase. So while we may not have an immigration crisis, we do have a demographic crisis of a lack of natural increase of our native-born population. So that maybe we need another conference to talk about the demographic crisis. So here I am over here, a little immigration crisis skeptic. Okay, I'll finish there.
Hello, hello, hello. Some of you may recognize Professor Susan Sue Hansen from a situation recently that has made its rounds on social media for her harassing a Black student at the University of Dallas. We'll get to that in a moment. Others may know her for her staunch conservatism and her neo fascist, tyrannical Christian views. But she has a long history of this within her own family, most notably with her father here. Oops, her father. Let's start there and bring this family history all the way up to Sue. Her father, Robert Philip Hansen, born April 18th, 1944, died June 5th, 2023. His father was a very emotionally abusive Chicago cop. And why am I starting with him? Because according to the FBI itself, he was the most damaging spy in its history. On January 12th, 1971, he was sworn in as an FBI agent. February 18th, 2001, he was arrested and charged with committing espionage on behalf of Russia and the former Soviet Union, and his alias was Ramon Garcia. And he took great care to never meet with Russian operatives. He was a big fan of the dead drop, and he never revealed his identity to them. And that bit of information is important to pay attention to as I continue to go down his timeline. He provided highly classified national security information in exchange for $1.4 million in cash, bank funds, and diamonds. In 1985, his spy activities began, and his training allowed him to go undetected. In the 90s, when leaks continued after the arrest of Aldrich Ames, he continued with his espionage. Now, Aldrich Ames was a veteran CIA case officer that was investigated for 2 years and ended up pleading guilty alongside of his wife. In 2000, original Russian documentation was secured by the CIA and FBI, which led to Hansen being investigated. He was set to retire, so the investigation needed to move quickly. He was removed from his post at the Office of Foreign Missions at the Department of State and was temporarily assigned to FBI headquarters. Got to keep an eye on him. In January of 2001, Hansen moved into a small office that had been outfitted with surveillance equipment. In February of 2001, there were approximately 300 people investigating and monitoring him. On February 18th, 2001, he was arrested while attempting a dead drop. On July 6th, 2001, he pled guilty to 15 counts of espionage. It is then that he took a plea deal, and to avoid the death penalty, because that is the penalty for treason, He agreed to reveal all of the information that he turned over, how he did it, who he was discussing things with, etc. May 10th, 2002, he was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. Now, Robert was the father of six, three sons, three daughters. And here's some things that came out also during the investigation and in subsequent interviews with media outlets with people close to the family. He allowed his friend Jack Hoschauer, uh, at times, without his wife's knowledge, to watch them have sex through a window. Then that moved to him setting up a closed circuit TV system where Jack could watch from a guest bedroom. He also discussed in detail with information that would make the couple highly identifiable to anyone who came across the information, his sex life in online chat rooms. He was also a regular at DC strip clubs and spent time and traveled with a Priscilla Sue Gailey, who was the stripper. He gave her money and a Mercedes Benz. The claim is that he was trying to convert her to Catholicism, and per Gailey, he declined sex. Now, she did give several interviews, so let's hear it from her.
He wanted me to go to a priest and confess. I guess he thought I had some deep, dark, secret sins, maybe, that I needed to get off my chest to change my life.
He certainly gave more money to Priscilla Sue Gailey than he ever gave to Opus Dei, which shows you how twisted his mind became.
Now, Opus Dei is the church that he and his family belong to, and we're going to get to them in a minute. But you see the disdain. Not that he was committing treason, not that he was spending time with a stripper who eventually dabbled into drug abuse and prostitution, but that he gave her more money. Now, he only stopped associating with Gailey shortly before his arrest because, like I said, she started to battle addiction and started to dabble in prostitution. Now, although raised Lutheran, he was a devout member of Opus Dei and attended Mass daily at 6:30 a.m. and often again at noon. Now, he converted to Catholicism due to his extremely devout wife, and that would be Bernadette Hanson, also known as Bonnie. They married in August 1968. Like I said, they had a total of 6 children: Greg, Jane, John, Lisa, Mark, and Sue, as we now know as Susan. All of the children attended schools associated with Opus Dei. 5 months after Robert's arrest, Bonnie apologized for the damage he caused. She also stated that life in prison was an appropriate punishment for him. She admitted to being anxious about her husband's actions. Keep that in the back of your mind as we continue on. She also stated that she was relieved that she and her children, and keep in mind, she was pregnant with her 4th child in the 1980s. She was relieved that she and her children would still receive approximately $39,000 yearly from his government pension. She was also able to keep the family home. She is a teacher at one of these schools that's associated with Opus Dei as well. As a part of the investigation, she had to take a polygraph, and this took place days before Robert was sentenced. It was revealed that around 1980, she found out that Robert was having unauthorized dealings with Russia, but she claimed she didn't know the extent. She said she stumbled upon him in the basement of the home and he was rushing to cover up paperwork. So she kept pushing him and pushing him to tell her what's going on. And he just said that he was basically trying to convince Russia to give him secrets and he was going to feed them false information. But even after this revelation, by her own words in multiple interviews, she kept pushing him regarding it over the years. And remember, I just stated, she said in her own words, she was anxious about his actions. She, upon stumbling upon this, she demanded that he go with her to confess to their priest. The priest advised Robert not to say anything to the FBI or anyone else, but to donate the money he acquired from charity. At that time, he told his wife that he had only acquired $39,000 and had spent most of it. And she was like, nope, you have to repay it back and start paying this particular charity. Now, keep in mind, he was paid in cash, bank funds, and diamonds. Oh, okay. Now, let's get on to Opus Dei. Now, first of all, Opus Dei is Latin for work of God. This church was founded in 1928 in Spain. The full name of the church is the Prelature of the Holy Cross and Opus Dei. It is a Roman Catholic lay and clerical organization whose members seek personal Christian perfection. Members strive to implement Christian ideals and values into their occupations and society as a whole. They are theologically conservative and they accept the teaching authority of the church without question. Now, they have been the subject of controversy. They have been accused of secrecy, cult-like practices, and political ambitions. Members are required to take a vow of obedience. Now let's get into the membership and activities. Since the organization became a prelature, however, it has required only a contractual commitment to receive spiritual formation, which includes weekly classes or circles and an annual religious retreat, among other activities. Members commonly practice self-sacrifice, which can include fasting and abstinence from certain pleasures, and self-mortification, such as the wearing of a cilice, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, which often takes the form of a spiked chain worn around the upper thigh, is not discouraged. New members serve a period of probation which lasts at least 5 years before they are fully admitted. Some members of Opus Dei, called numeraries, devote much of their time to the organization. Like priests, they are required to remain unmarried and celibate, but they live in the world and pursue secular occupations. The majority of members, however, are the supernumeraries who are free to marry, contribute financially to Opus Dei, and demonstrate Christian virtue in their daily activities. The group is also financially assisted by cooperators who are not members and, by permission of the Holy See, need not even be Christians. What now? Since when is the church not? Never mind. Ordained priests constitute only a tiny percentage of the organization. In 2016, they numbered some 2,100 of almost 95,000 members worldwide. So you don't even have to be ordained. Okay. The organization has established vocational trade, home arts, and agricultural centers in various parts of the world, numerous high schools, schools of business administration, and charitable activities. Opus Dei also founded and endowed with government assistance. What happened to separation of church and state? The University of Navarra, which is regarded by many as Spain's finest university, and operates the Pontifical University of the Holy Cross in Rome and the University of Piura in Peru. Sorry if I mispronounced anything. Now, some of the most notable controversies, because Opus Dei included many highly educated people, Spain's leader, uh, Generalissimo Francisco Franco, involved several of its members in instituting economic reform in 1956, and among his ministers were members of Opus Dei. This led many to speculate that the group had political and economic ambitions, though Opus Dei's influence waned in Spain as other groups entered the political arena after Franco's death in 1975. Aggressive recruiting practices, the brainwashing of new recruits, and the isolation of members from their families are among the charges often leveled against the organization. Membership is usually kept secret, which has fueled allegations that the group operates as a cult or elite secret society. Pointing to its continued growth, Opus Dei denies these accusations and has the continued support of the Vatican. At this point, is there anybody at the Vatican? Nope. Now, Opus Dei, by many, is classified as a neo-fascist organization. It is riddled with racism. It is fervently anti-LGBTQIA+, and relishes in the persecution of anyone within the community. It does not promote birth control and does not promote educating its members on birth control. It has a long history of protecting pedophiles and is exclusively right-wing in political intervention. Now up to speed with Professor Hansen. Oh, Susie Q. Now, on her high school's website, as an alumnus, there are some things that kind of stuck out. Here's one excerpt. Another history teacher, and she went to Oak Crest. Another history teacher she remembers fondly is Miss Margaret Otto, who introduced the famous Catholic historian Christopher Dawson to Sue's class. When I was in 8th grade, she taught Dawson's insight that the root of every culture is a culture's mode of worship, Sue remembers. First, you need to understand a culture's God and then their family structure. Their political reasoning, their economic workings all flow from that. It was the exact opposite of what Marxists would teach, that economics is the foundation of everything in culture, literature, family relations, philosophy, and theology are nothing more than ideological superstructure justifying economic oppression. History today is every bit as much of a battlefield as it was when they trained me up. Not educated, trained up. She also stated this. Now at the University of Dallas, she teaches American civilization at the school's Texas campus and Western civilization at the school's campus in Rome. What a crazy, blessed life, she said. It's a great way to fight the culture wars. And you heard what she said about native-born people. She's not talking about indigenous Americans. Now, let's get to how most people were introduced to her on the internet.
This professor at the University of Dallas was harassing a black student who was listening to a lecture quietly outside of her office in a common area where tons of other people are talking. I'm going to show you the video, but stick around afterwards because then we're going to talk about her.
We can do this all day. And I'll turn it up to 100.
Reaction. The next step is to strategize. Think about a plan to solve the problem. Create a conceptual plan. To calculate delta H reaction from standard enthalpies of formation, subtract the Heat's information of the reactants multiplied by their stoichiometric coefficient from the Heat's information of the products multiplied by their stoichiometric coefficient. Follow the conceptual plan to solve the problem. The standard enthalpies of formation for each reactant and product are shown here. Remember that the standard enthalpy of formation of pure elements in their standard state is 0. Calculate delta H reaction by substituting these values into the equation. Go ahead and try that now. What is delta H reaction?
Now, the young woman in this video is getting a lot of flack from people on the internet being like, oh, why didn't you just put the headphones in? But honestly, that's beside the point. If she's sitting there quietly listening to a lecture, then she's fine. I don't know if you've not been to college, but that's just what you do. When you have time, you sit down and you just do some homework. And if they're not designated quiet zones or study zones, then she's fine. She pays them thousands of dollars to be there. But anyway, back to her. Yeah, well, Dr. Susan Hansen, you were pretty easy to find. Oh, but get this. Yep, she teaches British and American history. She is an American history professor in Texas. I think you know where this is going.
We need many different units in the fight for American culture. We desperately need the valiant news sources that warn us daily, hourly, of the signs of destruction all around us, the radicalization of the Department of Justice and the targeting of patriotic Americans, the lunacy of our quote-unquote medical health professions under the craze of transgenderism, the steady drumbeat of cancel culture against anyone who speaks the blandest common sense like Jordan Peterson.
And after a little digging, you wouldn't be surprised to find out that Peterson, the man she was talking about in that speech, is someone who's a clinical psychologist, basically a pseudoscientist who uses pseudo-facts to promote white nationalism. But let's face it, we could tell that this was actually about the race of the young woman when her phone was shaking as she was recording her. Sorry, I had to restart this video like 5 times. But anyway, here's the long-awaited part 2, in which I prove that this woman was racially motivated when she harassed a black student studying outside of her office. Susan Hansen and her whole family are openly part of Opus Dei, which is essentially a cult for Catholics. And while many of the students at UD think that she is a nun, what she actually is something called a numerary. They remain celibate and they get secular jobs, where they are expected to infiltrate society and impose their political views. And these numeraries are expected to practice self-mortification, where essentially they wear a spiked chain around their body under their clothes at all times. Most of them usually wear something around their upper thigh. They use aggressive recruiting practices and they brainwash new recruits, including the use of psychedelic drugs on teenagers. Yeah, we're coming in strong here. Next, I would like to take you back to 2020. In the wake of George Floyd, a bunch of them wanted to start a Student Leaders for Racial Justice group. And it would be open to anybody, while also creating a safe zone or space for people of color to come together. But apparently 13 faculty members signed a statement saying that the club could polarize campus. Yeah, in this statement, they essentially said, well, then we're just, organizing people by color, and that's wrong. People are more complex than that. Well, somebody in the faculty leaked this statement, and guess who was literally the first name on the list? People suspect that she actually wrote it. Yes, Susan Hansen. Then she turns the whole thing around and said that the people were trying to use media to bully and harass the professors. And then said the mere idea of a safe zone for BIPOCs would be implying that that means their campus isn't safe. And one of these professors had the nerve to say, oh, this would impose burdens on people because they would be forced to serve as ambassadors for their race. Yeah, that's kind of the job. But a mere 2 months earlier, the campus was steeped in a racial controversy when 4 students dressed up as Trump's wall for Halloween, with the caption, Jose. And guess who was real quick to defend this? She basically said because a person of color was in on the costume, then it was fine. Yeah, except the student that she was talking about playing Jose was a little Spanish, a quarter Italian, and the rest Native American. So he was not even Mexican. But brown is brown, close enough, right? Now, these students did get punished by the university, but not for the racism. No, it was for the fact they were at a party not wearing masks and underage drinking. And because these school administrators have no backbone, she took that as an opportunity. She essentially tried to boil the issue down to being woke equals afraid of COVID-19. Which brings us to the racist dessert of the meal I am making of this woman, in which she wrote a full article in 2021 bashing her employers for not letting the professors call COVID-19 the China virus. You see, in this article she wrote, she was defending a professor who was getting a lot of heat because he had a day on his syllabus called China virus. And while this whole article centers around another professor and the school, she even admits that the syllabus was a photocopy of her own. She had done it first. She even admits that she has been accused of racism so much that it is a common fact. But she likes to push off the blame, saying it's because she appeared on Fox News once. She slams the student newspaper for writing articles on diversity almost every issue, blaming Black Lives Matter and its support for the LGBTQ gender ideology. And while she points out that the school has diversity officials, committees, and clubs, like the one she fought against, there are way too many quotations in this paragraph to believe that she looks at this with any sort of positivity or sincerity. In fact, she flat out criticizes the university for their diversity. This woman is legitimately a danger to society. So don't you dare try to sit there and tell me that this wasn't racially motivated. I sat through hours of this woman's lectures today. Her entire career in academia is based on coded eugenics, and her pursuit of higher education was solely because of the Opus Dei ideology, which morphed to engulf MAGA white nationalism. That higher education that was bought and paid for by Putin and her father's treason. All right, let's go ahead and make one thing clear. She was harassing the student. This was after this woman had called security, and security had told the girl that she was doing nothing wrong. This professor pulled out her phone after security left because she was trying to intimidate her and try to provoke her so that she could show the school this video and get the girl in trouble. And let's also clear up the fact that the girl had her class canceled last minute, and so she had 45 minutes to kill. That's not enough time to go back to your dorm room, and she had forgotten her headphones. So she sat there and was productive for 45 minutes in between classes. You can even hear in the beginning of the video how quiet the actual sound was. She only turned it up because this woman wouldn't leave her alone. You can literally see in this video that there's a whole common area right here, and you can hear other students talking and having normal conversations. I mean, listen to this part in the video. You can clearly hear someone even talking very loudly far away.
Product multiplied by their stoichiometric coefficient. Follow the conceptual plan to solve.
So why didn't she tell those people to be quiet if it was about the noise and disrupting her work? So we finally have answers to this question, and I'm going to let Corey tell y'all herself.
The gentleman in the video, he was such a sweetheart, and he told her to go back in her office, and she did. Like, she listened to him. And then he sat with me, asked me if I was okay, asked me did I want to take a walk. And in the midst of all that, I asked him, was I bothering you? Like, was I a distraction to you? He told me that he couldn't hear my video. He told me that he heard a video going, but he couldn't hear the contents of the video. And I rest my case.
So yes, I am happy to report that this was one of the good guys. It seems pretty obvious to me, and especially after Corey uploaded some answers to people's questions, that, yeah, this woman was just on a power trip. She didn't like being told no. This girl was literally bothering no one. This guy sitting at this table right here couldn't even really hear her video, and he wasn't bothered at all. And when Susan Hansen here didn't get her way, she started secretly recording this girl who was just trying to freaking study. I kind of hope we find this guy so that we can all show him some TikTok love. Y'all, I have spent the last 4 hours in a rabbit hole learning about this woman, and my jaw hurts from picking it up off the floor so much today. I'm going to warn y'all right now, this is probably going to be a two-parter. There's so much stuff. As we all know, she has her doctorate in history at University of Dallas. But here's some history for you. Dr. Susan Hansen is the daughter of Robert Hansen, who is considered to be the worst spy in American history. He worked for the FBI, and for over 20 years, he was selling our secrets to the Russian government. He sold out American undercover spies, and they were executed. They had to change FBI protocols because of this guy. For the last 21 years, until he died earlier this year, he was in the most secure prison in the federal system. And it's the place where they literally put terrorists. And he was held in solitary confinement for 23 hours a day. And in fact, he confessed to his wife in the 80s that he was a spy for Russia. And instead of turning him in, she called their priest. I don't understand why the mom wasn't convicted of anything, but, moving on. Speaking of the mom, she taught at the Oak Crest School for Girls, in which Susan also attended. This school was so racist, homophobic, and xenophobic that the alumni from this school started their own Instagram page where they could share stories. They wanted to bring attention to the horrific things that were being taught in that school. And oh boy, am I bringing some light. I'm going to show you all a bunch of these, but I won't read the whole thing. Feel free to pause at any time so you can read the whole paragraphs. Their classroom lectures would consist of content like the inherent brokenness of the Black single-parent families, or abusive parenting practices among Latinos. The dean of students told a Black girl, "Can you fix it?" referring to her natural hair, even going so far as to grab it. There's stories of Black students not being allowed to take AP courses while their white counterparts who had lower grades were able to take them, telling her that she was gonna fail if she took it. Oh, this biology teacher had the Confederate flag on the back of her car, calling the Civil War a war of northern aggression. They instructed photographers to use the only 2 people of color in the class for the brochures. The theology teacher would teach them that racial profiling like stop and frisk was justified because statistics showed that African Americans do commit the most crimes and are hence most likely to be guilty of a crime. In middle school, they were taught that Black and brown people were more likely to get pregnant because they had a lack of education, and healthcare providers preyed on them to push a liberal agenda, even dress coding students because they were more exotic looking. There are a ton more of these. I highly encourage you to go look them up and read through them all because it is just heartbreaking. But again, keep in mind that this is not only the school that Susan went to, but her mother taught at. And if you're still looking at all of this background and thinking, well, maybe she wasn't racist towards that girl, it was about the headphones. Well, then buckle up because in part 2, I'm going to be dropping things that she actually said out loud in public.
I need you all to keep in mind that there are churches that still hold on to the tyrannical pseudo-Christianity that propels their racism. And this is why I said this family, their heirloom is tyrannical Christianity. It makes them feel okay and holy while treating others like crap. And if there's just one true God, why does everybody split off and create this umbrella of Christianity where they take portions of the Bible, interpret it how they want in order for them to feel comfortable? And the comfort level, most often, has nothing to do with the doctrine of Christ. From the Father all the way across, there has been nothing but sin that has been forgiven by the church. The only grievance that the church had with this man was that he didn't give enough money to the church once they found out exactly how much he was taking in. The indoctrination is not coming from liberal ideology. There is no culture war. There is no war on woke. The call is coming from within the house. They're utilizing hell and brimstone to get people to be bigoted, racist, homophobic, etc. They don't care about being their brother's keeper. And yet again, there's truly not much in the United States that isn't rooted in savagery and racism. Till next time.